Hey guys, Brandon over at LS4 King doing another new product video today. We're talking about our Billet alternator relocation bracket that accepts full-size 2014 to 18 GM truck alternators. Head over to the mock-up motor here where we can illustrate things a little bit more clearly. Really get an idea of what this bracket looks like and how it fits with the rest of the accessories on the LS4. Works especially well with my bell tensioner. So let's head over here and take a look at a stock bracket. Talk about why you would want to switch to this, or switch away from this rather. So what we have here, in typical GM fashion, is a unique piece specific to LS4 applications. This alternator bracket's massive. Cast steel, very bulky. Once it's bolted up to the cylinder head and it moves the alternator inboard, all of this really gets in the way of fun stuff like aftermarket intake manifolds, fuel rails. You know, you have to do some heavy modification to this bracket to accept any aftermarket intakes. So let's start by popping it up here on the scale. What we have is 12 pounds with no alternator, no idler, no hardware. The bracket alone is 12 pounds. Now, the OEM bracket is intended to take this alternator. This is the small 105 amp LS4 specific alternator. No other application I'm aware of uses this specific 4-bolt case. It uses GM's newer 2-wire connector, as this alternator is PCM controlled. Charging is based on the demands of the vehicle. And it has the 12-volt stud on the back of the case. Not a bad unit. The problem is low amperage from the factory, 105 amps. And the second issue is they're very difficult to find in parts stores. You know, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to find this alternator in your local auto parts store. However, you will find this alternator. You know, 2014 to 18 truck alternators, virtually every parts store in the country should have some variant of this on the shelf. So if you're on a road trip, you're going cross country, your alternator fails, good luck finding one. This definitely simplifies things. So that's the first issue, availability, right? Also, again, as we mentioned, 105 amps. This is a really small unit. There are companies that will make these up to 300 amp, maybe a little more. I think there's a few companies that do like 320 amps. It requires an extremely small pulley. You're limited to the RPM use of the alternator, and it's really not the right way to get maximum amperage if you're like a car audio guy or you have a vehicle with a ton of electrical demand. This is much simpler. These start at 150 amp and go up from there. I mean, you can get these units with billet cases all the way up to 400 amps if you're a show car guy and you've got some bumping system in the giant trunk of your W body. You know, so in terms of versatility and being able to support the type of things that you're into, this bracket going with the truck style alternator is a great solution for a lot of people. And as we were discussing earlier, you know, that cast bracket is very bulky. It protrudes into this area. You know, with the stock bracket, I couldn't even bolt a blower with our adapters onto the motor. With the billet bracket, obviously we can. So, getting back to a couple other reasons of why we should switch away from this. So, as you already saw, stock unit comes in at about 12 pounds. I'll show you what a lot of guys do. This is actually from my very first Monte Carlo we did. This is from the very first LS4 swapped vehicle. And as you can see here on the back side, we milled all of this off to give us clearance for fuel rails, giving us clearance for the LS2 intake manifold that we were running at the time. This is a very common mod. You know, obviously we did it pretty nicely on the Bridgeport. Most guys are going at this with flap discs, which takes countless hours to cut through all this cast and get it smooth and get it looking nice. And even when you're all said and done, you're not saving a ton of weight. So again, like I said, stock bracket comes in 12 pounds, unmodified. Flip it over so you can see the difference. Modified bracket comes in at 9 pounds. So we took 3 pounds off the bracket, which is pretty impressive just the way it sits. But let's get away from both of those. Check out the billet bracket with all the spacers. you know, minus hardware, so same configuration as the stock one, and we are at 1 pound. 11 pounds of savings just by converting from the steel bracket to the aluminum bracket. Not to mention all the real estate you gain for fun activities. This is a no-brainer, guys. You know, for years, LS4 enthusiasts have really fought with those crappy alternator brackets, myself included. This is something I've always wanted to come up with. I was really hesitant. I didn't think that it would fit well in the engine bay going to the larger alternator. But as you can see here in the Super Duper, it fits extremely well. Now, I will say there are different orientations. You'll notice here, my 2-wire connector is virtually at the 12 o'clock position. The 12-volt lead for the alternator is closer to, 10:30, 11 o'clock. This is one version. So this alternator was from a 2015 Chevy Silverado 2500. That's how the connector orientation is. Now, something that might be more advantageous for some guys, this is a 2014 2500 150 amp alternator. As you can see, the electrical connector faces back towards the firewall instead of the 12 o'clock position. So that might give guys a better orientation for their specific application if they have limited hood height for swaps. You will notice the 12-volt stud is similar to the stock location of the LS4 alternator if you use the 2014 model as well. So the nice thing about the bracket is it gives you guys flexibility. You can run 2014 to 18 truck alternators, or you can go older with the 3 and 4 wire connectors and the various regulator configurations. So there's really something for everybody and still fits in the engine bay. Now, my motor is sitting on the LS4 King solid engine mounts for stock transmission engine applications. When you're on the LS4 King mounts, if anything, it actually raises the motor a tiny bit. So if you're on stock rubber mounts, and they are in good condition, or you're on poly mounts, your drivetrain's probably even going to sit a little bit lower than this. And as you can see, we still have plenty of hood clearance, plenty of clearance at the strut tower. And again, it really opens up room for those aftermarket fuel rails, for aftermarket intakes. Even gives you some real estate to move the power steering reservoir over if you want to get creative with your truck intake swaps, or if you were going to put like an Edelbrock ProFlow or something on your car. This bracket definitely opens things up. I do have a belt figured out for enthusiasts who are using my belt tensioner. I do not recommend this setup with a stock LS4 belt tensioner. If you want to do it, by all means, go for it. I'm not going to tell you not to, but you're on your own for figuring out belt length. I personally don't feel the LS4 King, the factory LS4 belt tensioner is adequate for the accessory drive on the LS4s. My belt tensioner puts a lot more tension on the belt. I feel a lot better about this with a high amperage, heavy alternator up in the stock location. Again, if you want to run this with a stock tensioner, by all means, feel free to try it. You will need to figure out your own belt again. For reference, the belt that I found to work with my tensioner is only a 1/2 inch longer than the belt that we include with the tensioner kit. So if you're on a stock tensioner, you could expect something similar. You could expect needing to add about a 1/2 inch to your belt in order to fit the larger truck alternator in its new orientation. So these will be up on the website for purchase. Super simple design. They include all the spacers for the back side of the mount where it attaches to the cylinder head. Comes up with a small spacer for your idler pulley. Ready to install with hardware. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comments below or email sales@ls4king.com. But definitely consider this modification in terms of the weight gains, the performance gains, and the fact that now you have an alternator you can find anywhere in the country. Speaks volumes about why you would want this on your vehicle. Thanks as always for watching, guys. Look forward to speaking to you in the future with our next product video. Have a great day.